The last time I talked about the Magical Girl Raising Project anime was when I talked about the twisted mind of Swim Swim. But if you watched the series, you would know that Swim Swim wasn't the only villain. There was actually a ton more other characters that showed how much evil somebody can have. And of course, I feel like it's better now to talk about the main antagonists themselves, Fave. Fave, unlike Swim Swim, in which you could argue that she was corrupted with a mindset because of a person she looked up to, Fave is the complete opposite, as Fave is the definition of pure evil, and how this seemingly innocent looking creature is responsible for the many events that happen in this series. But before we talk about the many things that Fave was responsible for and the many evil actions they did in this series, we have to talk about a little bit of their past, because they do have a very interesting past that is connected to the many actions that they are going to do and the kind of mindset that they have. Fave is one of the cyber fairies that was created by the magical kingdom from the land of magic, and their role was to turn anybody who played the mobile game Magical Girl Raising Project into actual magical girls. However, while their original job was just simply to monitor the girls through the selection exams, Fave's coding was actually far different from the other cyber fairies, and that is because due to an error in their coding, Fave developed interests of their own. And because of this, we will see how truly dark this mind really was, as of course, while Fave did have the abilities to turn people into magical girls, usually the norm is always picking good people who have good intentions in order to become magical girls. However, because Fave had a mind of their own, they quickly started to believe that not everyone had to be actually good in order to become magical girls. Because of this mindset, this does explain why some characters like Calamity Mary, a magical girl in which in their actual life was not only a terrible mother but also an alcoholic, was given the powers to become a magical girl, since in reality this is the last person you will ever want to give powers to. But now knowing what Fave's mindset is, it's no surprise that a good portion of the magical girls in this series became magical girls despite them not being not so great people. And this is further proven with the relationship that Fave has with a magical girl known as Cranberry, as it turns out that these two have a very long history with each other, because as it turns out, during one of the selection exams in which Cranberry was involved in, this exam did not go according to plan, as accidentally a demonic monster from the game was actually brought into the real world. And due to this, many magical girls lost their lives, many except for Cranberry, who actually was the only one to manage to kill this demon. This will lead into Cranberry being twisted in her own way because she developed an interest in taking down opponents that she deemed as strong. Seeing this, Fave decided to make an alliance with Cranberry, and as a result this, both Cranberry and Fave will be responsible for the selection exams, in which the reason why this even happened to begin with was because Fave realized that if Cranberry was involved with how the selection exams will function, then this will result in Cranberry making selection exams that, according to Fave, are seen as very exciting to see what will happen. So many of the events that happen in this story is because of this exam, the exam that both Fave and Cranberry have decided to make, making the magical girls believe that due to them having too many magical girls, some of them have got to go, and the only way that they can save themselves is for those who have the most amount of candy, and the one that has the least amount of candy is the one that will end up not being able to be a magical girl anymore. However, one piece of information that they don't disclose is the fact that when you are no longer a magical girl, you are no longer going to exist in real life as well, meaning that once you lose your powers, you lose your life as well. And that is something that Fave doesn't tell to any of these magical girls until one of them, this being Nemorin, is the first to pass away. And once the other magical girls hear the news that Nemorin is no longer alive, they obviously confront Fave about this, in which Fave comes clean, saying that if you end up being in last place, not only do you end up losing your powers, but also end up losing your life, which of course shocks the other magical girls. But Fave doesn't seem to be unfazed about it, and you can quickly see the kind of character that Fave is. While Fave may present themselves as somebody who you can rely on and somebody that will never tell you a lie, that is far from the case, as once they are confronted by a piece of information that they can't really lie about, they will just come out and clean and get out of that person's persona that they always have and tell you the dark truth, and that's when you slowly start to realize the very messy and very disturbing situation that you are in. That's how many of the magical girls feel once they realize that this selection exam is in fact just simply a survival game, where some of them are not going to make it until the very end. But of course, these are things that Fave has no little interest in, because that's just how Fave functions. Fave cares very little about the magical girls and what they're going through, because for them, that is just part of the exam. This is something that is going to happen if you are in this exam. Despite the fact that they weren't being honest, and had they been honest, most likely a good portion of them would have not decided to be a magical girl, knowing what was going to happen to them. But that was the whole point. Fave knew that by being dishonest, nobody would suspect a thing, and they would believe that they are living the dream of having powers and being a magical girl. But it's not just these people that Fave is dishonest to, it's also the magical kingdom themselves, as Fave will report to the magical kingdom that the reason why these magical girls are no longer alive is because the magical girls passed away through peaceful means, when that is not true whatsoever. But that's just the kind of personality that Fave has, being dishonest to anybody that's around them. But of course, that's not the only thing that makes Fave a terrible being. It's also their lack of empathy, their lack of sympathy, but also just simply how they show very little care of the human life, as when magical items are introduced, it is made very clear that the only way you can get these magical items is depending on what the magical item is. That magical item can only be given to somebody who decides to give a certain amount of years of their life. And going back to Fave and Cranberry's relationship, Fave will show us that even the loyalty they supposedly show to their allies is once again just another facade. It's not real, as during the fight between Cranberry and Swim Swim's group, in which Cranberry will be killed by Tama, Fave is not sad or angry or feels any pity about Cranberry's death. In fact, when Fave sees that Cranberry has been killed, they just simply move on to the next person that they seem fit to be allies with, and in this case it was Swim Swim, making an alliance with Swim Swim despite Swim Swim showing no interest in wanting to be partners with Fave. This of course leads to Fave being angered, but also realizing that due to Swim Swim having a few screws loose, Fave doesn't see Swim Swim as somebody that they should be partners with. So in order to make sure that Swim Swim is no longer around, Fave goes to the magical girl Ripple and tells her about Swim Swim's weakness, this being light and sound. That's the reason how Swim Swim was able to be defeated by Ripple, was because Fave told Ripple about Swim Swim's weakness. And the reason why Fave went towards Ripple is because they knew that Ripple was very depressed due to the death of Top Speed, someone that she considered her friend and someone that she started to get used to being around with. So seeing how destroyed Ripple was after Top Speed's death, Fave used this to their advantage to get Ripple to be the one to end Swim Swim's life, and telling Swim Swim that if Ripple is defeated, she can make Ripple her apprentice. They both agreed to have a showdown once and for all, showing us in these moments just how good Fave was at manipulating two people, as they managed to manipulate two people into having a showdown, hoping that they both kill each other so that the one magical girl that Fave views as reliable, being Snow White, to be the only survivor. In fact, Fave was so confident that this plan was going to work that they even tell Snow White what the plan is and what is going to happen between Ripple and Swim Swim. And even though Snow White tries to warn them that this is all part of Fave's plan, it doesn't really happen, because of course during this battle we all know that Swim Swim will end up dying, and due to the many injuries that Ripple got in this battle, it seemed that Ripple was also going to die as well, leaving Snow White as to be the only last magical girl to survive. And upon believing that Ripple and Swim Swim are no longer alive, Fave congratulates Snow White for surviving and tells her that they are now both going to be partners, which of course Snow White quickly rejects, as she doesn't want to do anything with Fave. But of course this doesn't stop Fave telling her that there's not really a choice in this situation. And when Snow White wants to break the master terminal that Fave is using, Fave is not really scared because they believe that Snow White isn't going to be able to break it, and during these moments Fave actually starts taunting Snow White, telling her that the other magical girls, the reason why they're not here is because they were all weak, which of course makes Snow White even more angry, as these weren't just some other people, these were some people that she built connections with, and some of them lost their lives for no good reason. But this just shows the kind of evil Fave is, taunting the people who are no longer alive to be able to defend themselves. But once Fave involves Top Speed, saying that Top Speed died for nothing and that she was weak, that's where Ripple intervenes, telling them to shut up, which of course it reveals that Ripple was still alive and heard everything that Fave said. And upon realizing this is where you can see that Fave starts to panic, as they realize that in these moments, due to Ripple having Swim Swim's weapon that is actually very useful and can be used to destroy the Master Terminal, Fave tries to manipulate Ripple once again, telling her that they weren't being serious and that it was all just a misunderstanding, and that in fact they actually respect Top Speed and as well as the other magical girls. But during these moments, Snow White is actually hearing Fave's mind, and she hears how panicked they are and tells Ripple to not listen to anything that it's saying, which of course Ripple didn't need to hear that because she was already determined to end Fave right then and there, which she does as she breaks the Master Terminal, ending Fave in the spot. And that would be the end of Fave, an evil creature who enjoyed seeing the bloodshed that was happening between all these magical girls, who showed very little care about their lives and only cared about themselves. So seeing them beg and plead for mercy, seeing that they're about to die by a person that they underestimated, was very satisfying to see. And that was the biggest downfall for Fave, underestimating the people that may potentially go after them in the near future. Fave probably thought that they had everything under control and no one will be able to take them down, only for them to slowly realize in their last remaining minutes that someone was able to take them down, and it was somebody that was filled with rage for disrespecting somebody that they considered a friend. So because of that, there's not a lot of people that feel any sympathy for Fave's demise. And like I mentioned earlier before, unlike Swim Swim, in which even though Swim Swim was also a very twisted individual and everything that she did is no excuse because it was still evil, you could make the argument that Swim Swim was corrupted by a mindset that she believed she had to follow. Due to her always being loyal to Ruler, she felt that she had to be and do what Ruler would have done. But that is not the case with Fave, because this is what always was Fave, just an evil creature that had some very disturbing ideas in their mind, which is the reason that makes Fave one of the evilest characters in this series. And that's where I'm going to end today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.